Hello and welcome to the fifth part of UTT Business Router's basic configuration. In this video, I'll show you the network sharing and user management menu on the UTT Business Router. UTT Business Routers now include wireless models N518W, AC750W, AC750GW, AC1220GW, and wired models ER518, ER840G, ER4240G. As in the previous videos, we'll try to solve a question after finishing this one. The question is, how to monitor user traffic by their names. Please refer to this simple topology. The gateway is a UTT business router. There are several LAN hosts connected to the router. We wish to know the traffic of all the LAN hosts, and we want to distinguish the hosts by the usernames. We will discuss how to do this later. There are three parts on the network sharing menu. They are sharing management, FTP server, and shared account. First, let's take a look at sharing management. Before everything, make sure you have a USB drive or a micro SD card plugged in the router. Then we can share the data on the USB drive or micro SD card to LAN users through FTP. Speaking of FTP, let's move on to the FTP server page. We can set up an FTP server on the router to share data to local area users or remote users. All the sources we have shared are displayed in the shared directory list. Okay, after configuring the FTP server, the files we wish to share is ready. But first, people will need an account to log in the FTP server and check the files. That brings us to the next page, Shared Account. We need to configure accounts for users to access the FTP server. And we can define what the users could do with their accounts, such as read-only or read and write. Let's go to the demo part and set up an FTP server by ourselves. Click Network Sharing. Click Sharing Management. I have already plugged in a USB drive. We can see its capacity, use space, free space, and usage percentage in list. Check Enable Storage Device to enable the network sharing. If password protecting is enabled, we need to use the accounts which are set on the Shared Account page to access the storage device. If we click Disable here, the storage device will be disabled and we will not be able to access it. Before we remove the storage device, we should click Eject Device first. The Scan button allows us to search for available devices connected to the router. Next, let's click FTP server and configure it. Check here to enable the FTP server. If we want the FTP server to be accessed from the WAN side, that is from the internet, check remote access. We can change the FTP port here, but usually it is better to keep it as default. Click Add a new folder to configure the folders we wish to share. Specify a name for the folder. Select the folder we wish to share or just check Select All to share all the folders in a storage device. Then save. The shared folders are displayed in the list. We need to configure accounts for user to log in the FTP server. Click Shared Account. The two default accounts are Admin and Guest. Admin has the right to read and write data in the FTP server, while Guest can only read. Their passwords and rights can be changed by clicking Edit. New accounts could be added by clicking Add New Item. Okay, let's try to visit the FTP server with the admin account. For local users, double-click this computer, enter FTP //192.168.3.1:21. Please notice that 192.168.3.1 is the LAN IP address of my router, while yours might be 192.168.1.1. I have changed the default IP address. Let's enter this address in the address bar to open the shared folder. Enter the username and password, and we can see the files now. We can also use the FTP address in the web browser. Please give it a shot by yourself. Next, let's talk about user management. There are 6 parts on the user management menu. They are user status, IP MAC binding, PPPoE server, web authentication, user group, and service group. First is user status. We can monitor and analyze network traffic, online behavior of the LAN users, and current status information of each user, including traffic statistics, internet behavior, online time, and so on. Next is IP MAC binding. The IP MAC binding feature allows us to add the IP and MAC addresses of trusted LAN hosts into the IP MAC binding list. It can be applied to protect the device and the network against spoofing attack. Next is PPPoE server. A PPPoE server can be configured on the router to allow LAN hosts acting as the PPPoE clients and dialing up to the router. With this function, we could become a small internet service provider ourselves. Next is Web Authentication. If we enable the Web Authentication on the router, those non-PPPoE dialing users cannot access the internet through the router unless they are authenticated through a web browser. Next is User Group. We can manage users that have similar needs in groups. We can configure 2 types of groups, address group and account group. The last part is service group. Similar to user group, a service group allows us to apply services in a group. Service groups are based on common services. URL, keywords, and DNS can be created in groups for us to apply easily in access control rules. Existing service groups can also be referenced in a new service group. We can configure up to 10 service groups. Okay, let's look at the demo. Click Management. Click User Status. These diagrams show the network traffic analysis of LAN users. However, for now it is only a beta version and the database is not fully set up, so the result is not very accurate. It is not recommended to enable it currently. The user status list is what we should focus on. We can monitor the status of LAN hosts. The authentication mode here tells us if the user is PPPoE user or Web Authentication user. Here we can see the downloading and receiving statistics of the hosts. Also, their online time and user group are displayed here. Customers used to ask us how to monitor LAN traffic by the name of each user. I'll show you how to do this in the end of this video. Next, click IP MAC binding. This function aims at user identification. We can protect the router as well as the local area network by binding the MAC addresses and IP addresses of LAN users on the router. For example, if we click Add and bind all the LAN hosts into the IP MAC binding list, then uncheck Allow Undefined LAN PCs here, any host that is not in this list will not be able to access our network. It's just like the whitelist. Next, let's click PPPoE server. This is a great function. With it, we could lease our network to other people or manage the network strictly. First, check to enable the PPPoE server. If we select Enable in Mandatory PPPoE Authentication, users can only access the network by PPPoE connections. We could choose an exception group. The users in the exception group do not need the PPPoE account to access the router. Configure the start IP address, such as 10.10.100.1, IP counts, primary DNS server, and secondary DNS server. IP counts defines how many IP addresses can be assigned by the PPPoE server in all. Check here to allow the user to change their password by themselves. Maximum session defines the concurrent user number. Then we should configure PPPoE accounts. Click Account Settings. Click Add. Configure the username, password. We can limit the hosts applying this account by select Auto or Manual in MAC binding. If Auto is selected, the router will automatically bind the PPPoE account to the MAC address of the first connected host. After that, only this host can use this account and connect to the network. If Manual is selected, we can configure up to 4 MAC addresses. Only the hosts with one of these MAC addresses can use this account. Max sessions specifies the maximum number of PPPoE sessions that can be created by using the current PPPoE account. Static IP address specifies a static IP address that is assigned to the user who uses this PPPoE account. It must be a valid IP address in the range of the IP address pool configured in the PPPoE Global Settings page. The router supports PPPoE account billing if account mode is configured. It offers account billing based on date. The speed rate of this account can be managed here. A short description of this account can be set in remarks. The connected user status can be checked by clicking here. We could hang up a connection by selecting an entry and click Disconnect. Click Export Account. We can export the PPPoE account and save it as a text file. Click Import Accounts. We can import a PPPoE account file by copy-paste the content into this text area. Next, click Web Authentication. Check to enable Web Authentication. Non-PPPoE dialing users will not be able to access the network unless they are authenticated. We can select a background picture below and check Enable the background picture for the Web Authentication page. Like the PPPoE settings, an exception group can be configured here. We can configure a notification or description in this text area. Click Account Settings. Click Add. Configure the username and password. Specify the max sessions, which limits the number of hosts applying this account. Like in the PPPoE function, we can check billing mode, specify a date range, and total time, the unit of which is hour. In the specified date range, this account can be used to access the network for the specified hours. Click Client Status. The status of connected hosts can be monitored here. We can manually disconnect a host by clicking Disconnect. Next is User Group function. Actually, we were already using it in this video. Click Add. Specify a group name. Configure an address group. Enter the IP range here. And click the right arrow to add the IP addresses into this group. We can also select Account Group and configure PPPoE or Web Authentication accounts into a group. The last function we're going to talk about is Service Group. Click Add. Enter a group name. Select the type of service group. There are 4 types: regular, URL, keywords, or DNS. Let's take regular for example. We can select new service and customize the ports related here. Or select common service and add existing service into the group. Okay, now let's roll back to the question we had. How to monitor user traffic by their names. Let's go to the DHCP server page under Network. Click DHCP auto binding and enable these 2 functions. Then all the hosts connected to the LAN will be added into the IPMAC binding list automatically. Go to the IPMAC binding. Here are all the LAN hosts. Click Edit and configure a name for each host. Of course, we may need to check their IP address or MAC address first. Next, go to user status and ta-da! We can monitor the user traffic by their names now. That's all for the 5th part. For more information, please feel free to go to www.uttglobal.com, which is our official website. As always, you can contact us by sending an email to support@uttglobal.com. I hope this video is informative to you and I'd like to thank you for watching.